For decades, Boxcar Willie was one of country music's most beloved figures, the hobo troubadour who sang about trains, loneliness, and the working man's life. With his signature overalls, freight train whistle, and kind-hearted grin, he seemed like a man untouched by the darker side of fame. But behind that warm persona and old-time charm lay a mystery that puzzled fans for years, one that was finally revealed long after his death. And when the truth came out, it wasn't the wholesome story people wanted to believe. Boxcar Willie, whose real name was Leslie Travis Martin, built a career out of authenticity, or so it seemed. He wasn't just a singer. He was a symbol of a simpler America. His voice, filled with grit and nostalgia, could bring audiences to tears. But behind the curtain of that good-natured image, rumors began to spread about broken promises, health struggles, and a secret life that didn't fit the man fans thought they knew. When the mystery surrounding Boxcar Willie was finally uncovered, it shocked even those closest to him. From legal troubles to hidden tragedies in his personal life, the story revealed a far more complicated man than anyone could have imagined. The truth painted a haunting picture of loneliness, regret, and the heavy price of keeping up an illusion. What really happened to Boxcar Willie? And why did those closest to him keep certain truths buried for so long? This is the heartbreaking, little-known story behind one of country music's most mysterious legends. A story that changes everything we thought. We knew about the man who called himself Boxcar Willie before. The world knew him as Boxcar Willie. Leslie Travis Martin was just a small-town boy from Texas with a dream and a guitar. Born in 1931 in Sterrett, Texas, Leslie grew up during the Great Depression, a time when trains symbolized both escape and survival. He was fascinated by the sound of freight trains rolling through the night, and that fascination would one day define his life and legacy. As a young man, Martin joined the U.S. Air Force, serving proudly as a pilot and aircraft engineer. But even during those years of service, his heart was never far from country music. He played his guitar on bass, writing songs about the simple people he met, mechanics, farmers, and drifters, men who reminded him of the America he'd left behind. After 2 decades in uniform, Leslie retired from the Air Force in the early 1970s and decided to pursue his true calling: music. The story of how Boxcar Willie was born is one of legend. According to Martin, he was sitting at a red light one evening when he noticed a man who looked like a hobo crossing the street. The image struck him so deeply that he wrote a song about it titled Boxcar Willie. When he performed it on stage, fans loved it, and soon the name stuck. Leslie Martin disappeared, and Boxcar Willie became his new identity. But this wasn't just a stage name. Boxcar Willie became a full-blown persona, the lovable drifter with a soft heart and a voice filled with soul. He wore overalls and a train conductor's cap, carried a whistle, and sang songs about life on the rails. Audiences across America adored him because he seemed real, not polished like the Nashville stars, but genuine, humble, and rooted in a bygone era. By the late 1970s, Boxcar Willie was a sensation on the country circuit. His performances on Hee Haw and the Grand Ole Opry turned him into a household name. In an era when country music was becoming more commercial, he reminded fans of its heart, storytelling, emotion, and simplicity. He became known as America's favorite hobo, selling millions of albums through late-night TV commercials that became iconic. However, behind the music and the smile, Leslie Martin was living 2 lives. To his fans, he was the carefree wanderer, a man of the rails. But privately, he was a businessman struggling to maintain control of his growing fame and financial empire. He invested heavily in theaters and tourism ventures in Branson, Missouri, trying to turn his success into stability. The stress of managing fame, money, and expectations began to weigh on him. Still, the myth of Boxcar Willie only grew stronger. He toured relentlessly, performing hundreds of shows a year, sometimes even when his health was failing. Fans saw him as indestructible, a man whose joy came from singing for others. But those close to him knew that Leslie Martin, the man behind the hobo hat, was exhausted. In interviews, he sometimes hinted at the divide between his public image and private reality. "People think Boxcar Willie is always smiling," he once said. But sometimes even Boxcar gets lonely. No one realized at the time how prophetic those words would be. As the years went on, the pressures of fame, hidden financial troubles, and a secret illness began to unravel the image he had so carefully built. The story of Boxcar Willie's rise was pure Americana, a man who lived his dream and brought joy to millions. But as the mystery of his later years would reveal, the cost of that dream was far higher than anyone imagined. As the 1980s rolled on, Boxcar Willie seemed unstoppable. He had gone from a novelty act to a full-fledged country star, performing on the Grand Ole Opry and selling millions of records through mail-order commercials that became late-night staples. But while the world saw a man living his dream, those closest to him knew a different story, one filled with exhaustion, debt, and declining health. Leslie Martin, the man behind Boxcar Willie, had created one of the most marketable personas in country music history. But that success came at a steep price. To maintain his brand, he was constantly on the road, performing hundreds of shows each year. He built theaters, opened stores, and turned Boxcar Willie into a full-blown business empire in Branson, Missouri. Yet, with every expansion, his financial pressures mounted. Friends said he was driven by an almost desperate need to keep the dream alive. He didn't want to disappoint anyone, one of his bandmates recalled. He knew fans came to see that smiling hobo with the train whistle, and he gave them that, no matter how bad he felt inside. Behind that ever-present grin, though Leslie was growing tired, physically and emotionally, years of touring took a toll on his body, and the stress of managing his finances wore him down. Even worse, he began to face mounting health issues that he kept hidden from the public. At first, it was just fatigue and pain. Then came something far more serious. By the late 1990s, Boxcar Willie was quietly diagnosed with leukemia. True to his private nature, he told very few people. He continued performing, refusing to let fans see him weak. On stage, he was still the cheerful drifter, cracking jokes, singing songs about trains and love, waving that familiar handkerchief in the air. But off stage, his battle with illness grew harder each day. He was a fighter, one close friend said. Even when the pain was bad, he'd go out and give 110%. But you could see the sadness in his eyes. He knew time was running out. Meanwhile, rumors began to swirl about the decline of his empire. His Branson ventures were struggling, and some alleged that poor financial management had left him in serious debt. There were whispers of broken contracts, unpaid staff, and mismanagement, though much of it was kept out of the public eye out of respect for the beloved performer. At the same time, a darker rumor began to emerge, one that would haunt his legacy. Years after his death, accusations surfaced online linking Boxcar Willie's name to unfounded conspiracy theories involving secret lives and criminal allegations. Though none of these claims were ever proven, they clouded his memory and hurt his surviving family deeply. For them, it was a cruel distortion of the man they knew, a hard-working musician, not a villain. As his health worsened, Boxcar Willie withdrew from the spotlight. He made his final public appearances in 1998, smiling for his fans even as he fought an illness that was slowly taking his life. He didn't want sympathy, one friend said. He just wanted people to remember the music. On April 12, 1999, Leslie Travis Martin, the man the world knew as Boxcar Willie, passed away at age 67. His death left fans heartbroken and stunned. For so long, he had seemed larger than life, the eternal hobo who would keep singing forever. But after his passing, questions lingered. Why had he kept his illness a secret? What really happened to his fortune and business empire? And what was the truth behind the rumors that began to circulate after his death? The answers would emerge slowly, and they would reveal a story far more tragic and complicated than anyone expected. When Boxcar Willie passed away in 1999, the outpouring of grief was immediate. Fans across America mourned the loss of the America's favorite hobo, a man whose music had touched millions. But behind the tributes and kind words, a darker story was unfolding, one filled with confusion, financial chaos, and disturbing rumors that threatened to tarnish the memory of a country legend. In the weeks following his death, it became clear that Liesl Travis Martin's financial empire was not as stable as fans believed. His Branson, Missouri theater, once a bustling tourist attraction, was struggling to stay afloat. Some insiders claimed that poor investments, high operating costs, and the burden of maintaining multiple businesses had drained his savings. Others whispered that Liesl had been taken advantage of by people he trusted, business associates who profited while his health declined. His family was left to deal with the fallout. They discovered that despite years of fame, there wasn't as much money left as everyone assumed. "He poured everything he had into making people happy," a close friend said, "but he didn't take care of himself, not physically and not financially." But finances weren't the only issue. Shortly after his passing, a wave of shocking rumors began to circulate online, bizarre and unfounded claims linking Boxcar Willie's name to underground conspiracies and criminal activities. The accusations were sensational and completely unsubstantiated, but they spread rapidly through tabloids and internet forums. Many fans were stunned, unsure what to believe. His family, devastated and angry, fought hard to defend his reputation. "He was a good man," one relative said. "He didn't deserve to have his name dragged through lies after everything he gave to people." Yet the rumors persisted, blurring the line between truth and fiction. The internet had turned a kind-hearted entertainer into the subject of wild speculation. Adding to the confusion was the mystery surrounding his final months. Some close to him said he became increasingly reclusive, refusing interviews and keeping his illness private until the very end. Others hinted that he was burdened by guilt, not over any dark secret, but over the feeling that he hadn't been the father, husband, or friend he wanted to be. "He carried the weight of two lives," one bandmate said. "Liesl Martin the man and Boxcar Willie the legend. By the end, I think he didn't know where one ended and the other began. After his death, the Boxcar Willie Theater closed, his memorabilia was scattered, and his dream of a lasting country music attraction faded away. What remained were memories of a man who had poured his soul into every song, who loved trains, and who connected with people through sincerity. Not glamour, but even years later, the mystery continued to haunt his legacy. Fans debated what was real and what was myth. Was he a victim of bad business? Were the rumors part of a smear campaign? Or was Boxcar Willie simply another artist chewed up and forgotten by the relentless machine of fame? One thing was certain. The man who had spent his life celebrating the simple joys of America's heartland had left behind a story as complex as any country ballad, filled with triumph, heartbreak, and unanswered questions. And while the world may never fully know the truth behind the Boxcar Willie mystery, those who loved him insist on remembering the man behind the myth, not the rumors, not the controversies, but the warm, humble performer who sang about hope and humanity in a world that often forgets both. In the years following Boxcar Willie's death, the myths, rumors, and heartbreak surrounding his life began to fade, leaving behind something far more powerful, the truth about a man who gave everything to his music, and who quietly carried the weight of a life more complex than fans ever imagined. For all the speculation that followed his passing, those who truly knew Liesl Travis Martin spoke of one thing consistently: his kindness. Despite the chaos, the financial struggles, and the false accusations that surfaced after his death, Boxcar Willie's character remained untarnished in the hearts of those who loved him. "He was the most genuine man I ever met," a longtime friend said. "He didn't fake his love for people. He lived it." As the dust settled, his family began to reclaim his story. They worked tirelessly to preserve his legacy, ensuring that future generations would remember him not for scandal or sorrow, but for the joy he brought to millions. His music, once thought to be fading into nostalgia, found new life on digital platforms, where fans rediscovered his heartfelt performances, songs like Wabash Cannonball, Hobo Heaven, and The Last Train to Heaven. In Branson, Missouri, the town that once thrived around his success, locals still speak fondly of him. They recall how he would wander into diners or shops unannounced, greeting people like old friends. "He wasn't a celebrity here," one local said. "He was just Boxcar." the man who made you feel like you mattered. Even after his theater closed, his presence lingered, a reminder of a time when Branson was built on music, laughter, and heart. But perhaps the greatest truth that emerged after his death was that Lucille Martin never intended to deceive anyone. The persona of Boxcar Willie wasn't a mask to hide behind. It was a reflection of his soul. He saw himself in the lonely travelers, the dreamers, the forgotten workers riding the rails of life. In many ways, he became a voice for them, a symbol of resilience and hope. Still, the tragedy of his later years serves as a warning about the heavy toll of fame. In his relentless pursuit of bringing happiness to others, Boxcar forgot to care for himself. He ignored his worsening health, buried his exhaustion, and carried the burden of financial strain until the end. Behind the laughter and songs was a man who quietly sacrificed his own peace to keep others smiling. Today, that truth resonates deeply with fans who understand that heroes are rarely flawless. The image of Boxcar Willie, the humble hobo singer with the big grin, now feels even more meaningful. Because behind that grin was pain, perseverance, and profound humanity. The internet rumors that once threatened to overshadow his name have since been widely debunked. Historians and music journalists have set the record straight, reminding people that Boxcar Willie's only crime was caring too much about the character he created and the fans who loved him. His life, though marked by hardship, remains a testament to the power of authenticity in an age obsessed with perfection. In the end, Lucille Travis Martin, the man the world knew as Boxcar Willie, was not a mystery to be solved, but a story to be remembered. He embodied the timeless spirit of country music, a little sorrow, a little laughter, and a lot of heart. And maybe that's the real truth behind the Boxcar Willie mystery, that it was never about hidden darkness or scandal at all. It was about a man who lived for others, who sang for the forgotten, and who, even in death, reminds us that sometimes the saddest stories belong to the kindest souls. Because in the end, the legend of Boxcar Willie isn't about what he lost, it's about what he gave.